Whoa, 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 whoa.
Wait, what's the problem?
This
What's the matter?
This is not a Jet show.
So what?
So how about this?
Manning lobs it. Burris alone. Touchdown, New York.
Oh, come on. I don't want to hear this.
Why not? Super Bowl champions.
Doesn't matter. I just don't want to hear it.
What do you want to hear?
How about some Mets?
Hey, if I can find one good thing that happened to the Mets, here we go.
Home run. Mike Piazza and the Mets lead 3-2.
Oh, yeah. It's got to be, I'm sorry. We all can't be like the Yankees.
Oh, speaking of.
This one by Mattingly. Oh, hang on to the roof. Goodbye, home run. Don Mattingly.
No. God, I can't believe I just said that. All right, well, listen. How about a little Nets?
If I have to.
Kid, the jumper to win it. He got it.
I can't take it. I can't take it anymore. It's been a second. I can't take it. How about some Knicks?
Oh, yeah, big spenders. Can't win a playoff.
Fair enough.
Houston pops out up top, down the lane, running jumper, off the front rim, and in.
I guess we should talk a little hockey, no?
People even watch hockey anymore?
They watch the Rangers.
Well, if you have the Rangers, you got to have some violence.
Yeah, no, they didn't have a YouTube in the 80s.
All right, let's get the show started.
Here we are, polar opposites.
Hello and welcome to the Polar Opposites podcast on polaropposites.podbean.com. We're also live on Spreaker right now. We're also on TuneIn as well if you're a TuneIn person. And on iTunes, you can follow us on Twitter at PolarOpposites1. I'm Matt Stevens. Alongside me, as always,
It's Craig Moffat.
and Craig.
Matty, how you feeling today, Hammer? Giants were off this week, so you
Yeah, it
have
was
to
a
feel
great
good,
football
right?
week because I didn't have to watch the Giants crap the bed, so it was good for me. Although I did have to watch, if you got a chance, and we're not going to talk too much about the NFL of the week, it's each game individually. We're not going to break down each game, but man, it got hard to watch the Cowboy-Redskin game yesterday because the Redskins just didn't have any people left. They couldn't protect Kirk Cousins. Like, the Dallas defensive line sucks, and they couldn't protect Kirk Cousins, and I hate Dallas. So, anyway, but other than that, it was a very exciting sports weekend. Great college football on Saturday. You had two really fun and entertaining World Series games. You had a couple racist gestures. Let's see, what else did we have? We had some good football games. Last night's football game was actually pretty good, even though the ratings lost to the World Series.
Right.
And, of course, because, I don't listen to sports talk every day, but I do around the show because I like to hear what everybody's talking about, that sort of thing. And I was listening to the big fat guy on one of the stations in New York here during the day. And it's so funny, Craig, when people, and he talks about, he's like, I've had like 40, 50 people come up to me this year and tell me that they're not watching the NFL anymore, because of the protests and all this other stuff and blah, blah, blah. And he's talking about guys every day. Guys are calling up about it, that sort of thing. And I'm just thinking, man, the NFL is really scared about this. The reach of the old white guy is never ending. Because that's all the people that are angry. Would you agree with that? Like, the only people that are boycotting the NFL because of the protest are, like, people who are going to be dead in, like, 10 years.
People who are hopelessly devoted to their country. I mean, that's just really what
Yeah, that's what it is.
I mean, I hate...
What? Not hopelessly devoted to their country. They're hopelessly devoted to not understanding what's really going on.
Well, the fact is, these are the people that are taking it the most serious. We look at it as a peaceful protest. We look at it as this is your right to free speech. However, other people don't see it that way. My opinion is that, as like we've talked about, as much as I respect people kneeling for the anthem and all that stuff, I don't particularly like it because, I relate it to the military. But at the same time, I respect it. This is what you feel like you have to do.
It wouldn't make you stop watching the NFL.
No.
Right? But I'm like that way about everything. Now, the reason we talk about it is because yesterday. Now, here's here's where I have.
Although I don't buy those people are not watching football either.
No, well, the ratings show that they're not. Now, whether or not it's both sides, people who are not watching because Kaepernick's not getting signed, and people who are not watching because of the protests, or whatever the reasons are, the ratings are down. Now, is that mostly because people are watching on different devices? They're doing different things. That's all possible as well. But the ratings are down so much. The reason I bring this up to start, and we're going to do polar bipolar in a second because it's a good one this week. Got a lot of crazy things to talk about. Is because of the Texans all knelt yesterday, or it's like 70% of the Texans knelt yesterday. Right? They talk about things that they wanted to do to protest. One of the things they talked about was taking the decals off the helmet, right? And just all, we're decals. And your owner said something stupid. And it was stupid and stupid.
And ignorant.
Right. Totally ignorant. Absolutely. But for you to kneel now, like even the players at this point, like I can think of maybe a couple people off the top of my head, like Eric Reed, right? People who were kneeling before Trump talked, right? That's the Mendoza line.
Sure.
Right? So the people who were kneeling before Trump talk are kneeling for the right reasons. And for me, the people who are kneeling after Trump talk are kneeling for the wrong reasons. And that's the problem now. Okay? We've all lost sight of this. It's the problem. So you guys need to get together and figure it out because the NFL ratings are going down. Now, part of the reason is the level of play sucks.
Yeah.
We talked about it last week. It's bad. One of the best games that was played yesterday was the Jets-Falcon game in a freaking driving rainstorm.
Well, you look at it this way, and it's one of those things where the best games are the ones that are high scoring because they're just keeping you entertained. Because a lot of the low scoring,
but they're
games
not great games because the defenses aren't playing. But hey, that's besides the point. But you understand what I'm saying. So I just wanted to open with that real quick because I feel like we've now gone the complete opposite way. Now I feel like the people who are mad because they think they're disrespecting the troops. Because now I feel like the kneeling protest now is like it's like the Occupy Wall Street thing. When Occupy Wall Street first started, go back and look. Don't remember what Occupy Wall Street was at the end. Okay? Go back and look at what Occupy Wall Street meant and wanted in the beginning, right? It was very simple. They had like two demands. It was to get money out of politics and to I think one of them was like cap the amount that golden parachutes could be, stuff like that. But it was monetary and it had a focus, right? This was the same thing. Colin Kaepernick and the people who were kneeling at the beginning were kneeling because of police brutality against blacks in this country, right? But now we've switched. We're gone. It's all gone. And nobody knows what they're doing anymore. And now it's bad. Now it's becoming a detriment because now we're it's Bob McNair and it's Donald Trump and it's the way blacks are being treated by police and it's this, that, and the other thing. So either stop doing it all together or get it together and everybody is lockstep in why you are kneeling.
We're going to get into the Jets and Giants. We'll get into NFL Week 8. We will get into the World Series, which was quite the...
Oh, the pitching's been phenomenal.
Especially the bullpen.
Oh, my God.
We'll get into that. And, of course, we'll finish up with closing time. So we're going to do a little something different to open up the show.
Yeah.
We are decided normally we do this for the middle. We're going to do this for the beginning. This is not going to be a longer podcast today. So we're going to kick it off with a little polar bipolar. So, Maddie, hit the music. It's like you have to set the mood, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Polar bipolar is 10 topics, and it's pretty simple. Polar, you agree. Bipolar, you disagree. But I can guarantee at one point during the show,
I'm going to ask.
Maddie's going to ask.
Boom.
Because that's just how he rolls.
Yes.
Okay, Maddie, here we go.
Do it.
Number one, polar or bipolar. Jerry Reese blamed Ben McAdoo more than himself for the Giants' struggles this season.
I say bipolar. He came out and said, I'm the GM. It's my fault. These are my players. It's my fault. But at the same time, he's not the coach. He gives the coach the players, and the coach has to coach players. So there is fault to be passed around. It just sounds like he's doing that, when in actuality, it's everybody's fault. It's just everybody's fault.
Right.
All it is. All it is.
Okay.
Number two, if the NFL had its way, there would be a game in London every week.
Oh, this is 100% polar. And the thing is, I'd be all for it because I love the games in London. I actually think they're a lot of fun to watch. This game on Sunday really wasn't that bad. The Browns game, I thought the Browns actually played pretty decent.
Ooh.
The Browns played fairly decent in that game. It was just a case of the Vikings were just kind of steamrolled them in the fourth quarter. But the NFL is probably making a ton of money off this revenue-wise. And I think if they had their way, obviously not only do they want to put a team in London, obviously, but if they can't do that, they would settle for this in a heartbeat. They would easily want to have a game in London every week of the season. Number three, Maddie, polar or bipolar? The Kiko Alonso hit on Joe Flacco during Thursday's Dolphins loss was dirty.
Bipolar. Bipolar. 100% bipolar. And the reason is this. Joe Flacco was trying to juke the system. Joe Flacco was trying to get a flag, and he got it. Now he got a concussion, but he got a flag.
Well earned.
Because he deked the slide and then slid late. What is Kiko Alonso supposed to do? This is a giant-ass man running fast, trying to hit a quarterback who goes down late. I'm sorry, guys. I'm telling you, the rules should be simple. The quarterback, if you see a guy coming at you, you can't wait till he's 2 feet away to go into your slide. That's it. That's the way it is. It has to be more. You have to give this person a longer time to do it than that. You have to. And if you don't, well, I mean, that's on you. You're going to get a concussion. Sorry. Oh, boy. Number 4, the NL East is the worst division in baseball in 2018.
I'm going to say polar. I think it's polar 100% because basically with the Phillies rebuilding, not the Nationals, the Braves still rebuilding, but I think they're kind of at least a little bit more organized. And now Derek Jeter wants to have a fire sale in Miami where they're not only talking about getting rid of Stanton, but they're talking about getting rid of D. Gordon, Christian Yelich, Marcell Ozuna, any of those guys that can fetch them prospects to slash payroll. We really don't know what the Mets are going to be next year, where they're headed in free agency. And, of course, with the arms, you never know because they could get hurt at any time. The Nationals right now are the best team in that division, but it's not really saying much when the rest of the division is mediocre to below mediocre pretty much. Yeah. So in that sense, I'm going to say polar. Maddie, number 5, polar or bipolar. Frank Ntilikina is better than advertised for the Knicks.
It's Ntilikina.
Excuse me, sorry.
I'm just saying, I like that I knew that. No, bipolar. And it's, is there a fence option? Because I just don't know. I just don't know yet. Like, what we heard about him was that he had good court vision. He was a good passer. He played good defense because he has long arms. And he's not a great shooter. And so far, it's kind of been bang on. So I don't think he's been over or underrated. I think he's kind of just been rated at this point.
Right.
I think it's just that when you never see a guy, he's in France, he's, you don't see him, you don't know. So you look at, you highlight the YouTube videos, but it's not the same. And all of a sudden you watch him play in real time and he looks like he's a competent NBA player. Well, then people get excited. But this, what if that's his ceiling? You know what I mean? So you just don't know. You just absolutely don't know. Number 6, if the Rangers don't win tomorrow night against Vegas, Alain Vigneault should be fired.
I'm going to say bipolar. This came up the other day in the papers that there was a rumor going around that because the Rangers have been off to such a bad start that Vigneault could be on the hook. He could be on the hot seat already so early in the season. But I think he's done enough in New York to give himself some breathing room. Listen, the Rangers have made the playoffs, I think. I'm not sure if it's every season he's been there or maybe like 3 out of 4. I think they might have missed it once. And, of course, they got to the Stanley Cup Finals, I think, in his first year there.
Yeah.
He's done enough. The fact of the matter is that the Rangers are underachieving. And Lundqvist hasn't been very good, and he's been relegated to the bench, which is a little bit of a shocker. Kreider and Nash have been kind of hot and cold. And, outside of that, I think they do miss certain players. So in that sense, though, it's really could be more on the players than on Vino. So I don't think he should be fired at all. I think he's still a quality coach for this team. I just think the team has to wake up and start competing. So I say bipolar.
There you go.
Number 7, Alex Bregman is just as much of a pest as Matthew Dellavedova.
Bipolar, because Alex Bregman is so much better at baseball, or is going to be so much better at baseball than Matthew Dellavedova is going to be at basketball. I get what you're saying with the question. I get it because he is annoying. But, I don't think...
He's like that J.J. Barea, type.
Yeah, but you could even almost just put, his teammate on there, right? I mean, the guy who bats he was batting second last night, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So, yeah, the guy who bats after him, you could almost say is even worse. So, between the two of them, they're going to just see a ton of pitches. But, no, I think Alex Bregman is actually a very good baseball player, but you're on a team of very good baseball players, and you just get swallowed up sometimes.
Before we get to number 8, now that you played this song, rest in peace.
Indeed. Robert Guillaume. Love you. First black Phantom of the Opera.
And then he was in Lean On Me.
And he was also on Sports Night, which is a great sitcom if you've never watched. Excellent show. Number, 8?
Yep.
The 2018 season is make or break for the Washington Nationals.
I'm going to say polar because I know they have a new manager right now, Dave Martinez. We'll get into that later. But this is the year that Bryce Harper's a free agent after this year. So is Daniel Murphy. You're going to have Scherzer, and you'll still have the rotation. I think even Gio Gonzalez probably won't be there next year as well. But the Nationals have had more than enough time to turn this team into a contender to at least get past the first round of the playoffs, and they haven't done it. So in some way, yeah, I think this is definitely a make or break because if they don't do well this year, I think Bryce Harper's a goner. I think he's headed to either, I don't know if he's going to the Yankees, but I think he'll definitely consider the Dodgers. You could
be looking at a Marlins situation.
Sure. So in that sense, yeah, I think this is a huge year coming up for the Nationals in 2018, and it's going to be a ton of pressure on a guy like Martinez in his first year managing this ball club to get them past the first round of the playoffs. Maddie, number 9, polar or bipolar. You are okay with the 5-game suspension handed to Yuli Gurriel for next season for his actions during the World Series.
This is so bipolar. It's ludicrous. The gutlessness that the Major League Baseball commissioner acted with on this is aggravating. And the reason they gave is even more aggravating. Oh, we don't want to make it to hurt the other 24 guys on the team. Let me tell you something here, Commissioner Manfred, if that is your real name. All right? A guy who does that in the dugout like that, knowing full well that the entire world is watching you, just hit a huge home run, and you're in the dugout, there's cameras everywhere. A guy who does that is so comfortable doing that in that situation, is so comfortable just sitting there on the bench, making that gesture and saying those words, that is a systemic problem in that clubhouse that you're not paying attention to right now, okay? If that guy doesn't think he's comfortable doing that, he's not doing it. But he was obviously very comfortable doing it because right on the bench where everybody can see you. And if you don't know at this point that there's a camera on you at all times, then you're an even bigger moron than I thought. So, you know what? How about this? It should have been suspended for at least 1 game in the World Series. And if you wanted to get him for money, well, guess what you get him for? Guess what you get him for?
What do you get him for?
You get him for 1 or 2 games in the World Series. And then you get him for the money for the games that he's going to miss next year.
Okay.
That's what you do. And that's how you get him. You son of a bitch. Number 10, regardless of how he finishes the season, the Jets should not bring back Muhammad Wilkerson next year.
I'm going to say bipolar with a contingency they can get him to restructure. And what I mean by that is basically he's due a lot of money under the cap next year. It's like a $17 million cap hit. And obviously the production for this year has not been there. I mean, yesterday he had probably one of his best games. The past few weeks he's played a lot better. But it's still not that $17 million type player right now. So the thing is, if the Jets can bring him back on a little bit of a restructure where they can kind of, lower the cap hit, turn it into a signing bonus, figure out, work their magic to try to bring him back, I do, because he's still a good player, and it's one less position you're going to have to fill next year. But if you can't do that, then I would say cut him, because you save all that money under the cap, and you could probably find quality players or draft quality players at that point to replace him for next year. So I say bipolar with only under the contingency you can get him to restructure his deal heading into next season. And polar or bipolar is officially over.
Or institutionalized for the rest of your life for the terminally bewildered because your mind is gone.
You got to play
I'm
that again.
I'm going to play it again because it's one of the greatest things ever. I thought it was louder than that. I thought it would fit right over the Running Man thing. This is the immortal Bobby Heenan.
Or institutionalized for the rest of your life for the terminally bewildered because your mind is gone.
Institutionalized for the terminally. It's so funny. It's fantastic. So yeah, that's polar bipolar. What do you want to do?
Let's segue to the World Series real quickly.
Yeah, let's do
and
a
then
little
we'll do,
World
and then
Series.
we won't spend too much time on it because it's probably been exhausted to the end of time. The Astros have a 3-2 lead. Game 6 is tomorrow night in Los Angeles. Verlander pitching for the Astros. Is it not Hill? Is it for the Dodgers?
Yeah,
It's going to be Rich Hill. So it'll be Rich Hill for the Dodgers. And I couldn't sleep last night. I haven't watched too much of the World Series, but I have watched a little bit of it. And I finally caught the last 4 innings. And basically, it's become like a home run derby. It's like not really competitive from a pitching standpoint. It's really just more of a hitting standpoint. The Astros take a 3-run lead and then they blow it in the 9th inning because either the bullpen is just overworked or they're just not really that good. Kenley Jansen was on 30 pitches by the 11th inning last night, so you knew it was only a matter of time before he was going to cough up one because he hasn't really pitched that great in the in the playoffs. Overall, it's been Maddie will disagree because I think it's been entertaining just because.
No, entertaining is the proper word.
It hasn't been a great World Series.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been competitive. It's been competitive, like I said, from more of a hitting standpoint, not necessarily pitching. The pitching's been, like I said, atrocious. But overall, it's been pretty entertaining for the most part. Kershaw, you wanted to believe that he finally got over the hump, and then he just had a lousy game 5 yesterday.
How do you blow that?
It's
brutal.
I mean, they give you a 4-run lead, and you blow it. The only thing I will say, and I think you'll agree with me,
but Keuchel hasn't been better.
Keuchel has been bad ever since Game 5 against the Yankees.
It's true.
He did not pitch against.
It was almost like the crowd got to him or something. I don't know, because Game 2 he was great against the Game 1 he was great against the Yankees.
Yeah, Game 5 he didn't pitch well. Then he didn't pitch well in game one. He got rocked in game one. No, he didn't get rocked in game one, but he didn't pitch.
But he wasn't Keuchel.
He wasn't lights out compared to Kershaw in game one. And then yesterday again, he didn't make it out of the fourth inning.
Let's be fair. And I know that we, in the society right now that we live in, everything that happens right now is the biggest, greatest, baddest, awesomest, most amazingest thing that's ever happened. Every Super Bowl we see is the greatest Super Bowl we've ever seen. Every World Series we see last year was the greatest World Series we've ever seen. Every year something's the greatest World Series. Last year, Game 7 was the greatest World Series game we've ever seen. This year, this game was the greatest. Game 2 was the greatest game we've ever seen. 5 home runs in the after the extra innings. Greatest. Guys, in order for something to be great, there has to be equal parts great, right? Mm-hmm. So the pitching, now, great games are games where the pitching gives it up sometimes and gets out of it sometimes. Last night, there was no getting out of it. If a guy got on base, he scored. Like, that was the way it was. If there were no guys on base, nobody really scored. But as soon as a guy got on base, you might as well it should have been like, just pass go and go directly to home. I mean, it was ridiculous. So no, it's not a great World Series. It's fun. It's entertaining. I personally prefer pitching tension to unending runs. I prefer John Smoltz, Minnesota Twins.
Molitor?
No, damn it, who's the pitcher?
For who?
For the Minnesota Twins, 91.
Viola?
Was it Viola? I can't remember. Damn it, that makes me angry. But a 1-0 game that went 10 innings.
It was probably Viola.
But I mean, like, that's tension and awesomeness. And you had guys on base in that game. Like, it wasn't, there was hitting, but I understand our rush to want, and listen, Major League Baseball is not stupid for taking advantage of this by saying, Major League Baseball saying things like that, because they beat NFL last night. They beat the NFL last night in a game-on-game. Now, granted, one's the World Series and one's a Sunday night game, but the Sunday night game was Pittsburgh, which is a big team, and Major League Baseball won. And that was without the Cubs, that was without the Yankees, that was without the Red Sox. Now, the Dodgers are a big team. But you're talking about losing the East Coast mostly, right, for the World Series. And they haven't. We all thought, I thought when the Yankees were out of it that people would watch the World Series, but I didn't think the ratings would be this good. Really didn't. And it's been an entertaining World Series. But in order for something to be great, there has to be great pitching too. And we've seen one game. And all the other games, the managers are so scared. They're so scared. They took out Wood the other day. He was coasting. He hadn't given up a hit. He gave up a solo home run, and they took him out of the game.
I heard about that. I heard that this morning, and like, it was pretty true. Like, they really do get scared now to the point where they immediately want to run to the bullpen. And the thing is, tomorrow for the Astros, there is no reason to take Verlander out of that game unless he's getting shelled.
Or his arm is literally on the ground.
Yeah. Because there is no reason. He has been lights out for you.
And look, he's not to pitch again.
Yeah.
If he wins, if he throws 170 pitches.
Because right now, the thing is, all the pressure's on the Dodgers obviously tomorrow because it's lose and they go home.
Yeah.
And they're done. But the fact is that Verlander has been your best pitcher in the postseason in general.
It's not even
and he's
close.
been lights, and he's gone at least. He went 9 innings against the Yankees. He pitches deep in the game. So the only way you have to go to that bullpen because AJ Hinch has completely lost faith in Ken Giles.
Oh, he's gone.
Pretty much
and
as
Davinsky was terrible last night.
Davinsky was bad last night. Only when Musgrave came in did he pitch well. And Harris too. Harris is another guy who got roughed up a little bit. So this bullpen, Hinch is probably begging that Verlander gives him at least 8 innings tomorrow.
And to be fair, Justin Verlander's been the best pitcher in the entire playoffs, period.
Yeah.
Not even close. Forget about him coming in relief and giving up the run against the Red Sox. Forget about that crap. That's not him starting. As a starter, he has almost been perfect. He gave up, I think it was 2 or 3 runs to the Red Sox in his first start. That's like it. That's it. It's unbelievable. But
close it out tomorrow because going into Game 7 with all hands on deck, Verlander will not be, obviously, but you're going to probably go into that start with either McCullers or Charlie Morton, and that's a huge roll of dice for Game 7.
Also, the team with the last at-bat's going to win because the pitching is so bad. The relief pitching is so bad. You remember how I was after the Yankees lost? I wasn't too upset. I'm excited for the future, right?
Yeah.
Watching these two teams and their bullpens and their inability to get outs, now
mean,
pisses me off.
Look at Brandon Morrow.
Yeah, but now it pisses me off.
He comes in, the first pitch he gives to Springer still hasn't landed yet.
But the Yankees, with their bullpen and their starting pitching, could have given the Dodgers a huge run for their money at this point with the way they've been going. Mm-hmm. But that's besides the point. So you got Game 6 tomorrow night. They got their travel day today, Game 6 tomorrow night. I will say this, that I think we are witnessing, hopefully, a bottoming out of the complete and utter reliance upon the sabermetric numbers. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes, you know what sabermetrics don't take into account, Craig?
What's that?
Fatigue. They do for starting pitchers. After 75 pitches, you get this guy out because the numbers go down, blah, 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 blah. But for a reliever, they don't really figure it in. They don't really factor in that Kenley Jansen has probably pitched more innings than he ever has in his life at this point. Right. And his idiot manager is bringing him in the 8th inning to get 6 outs. They don't factor in that Giles and all these other guys have been pitching so long, more than they ever have before, because they're Houston went 7 games, 4 games, 7 games, and now 6 games. And with starting pitchers being pulled in the 4th inning of games, they have a no-hitter going in. Eventually, this was inevitable. It was inevitable. And so, hopefully, it's not going to happen. It's like pissing in the wind, right? That they're going to become less reliant on the numbers and a little bit more reliant on both your eyes and your numbers together. Mm-hmm. If you use them together, like Terry Francona does, if you use them together, you get better results, I think.
So Game 6 and 7 will be tomorrow and Wednesday. Other really quick news, we didn't talk about it last week. It actually happened right after we did our show on Tuesday, and that is the Yankees and Joe Girardi have parted ways after what I thought was probably one of his best seasons as manager of the Yankees outside of the faux pas in Game 2.
Which was erased when they won the series.
Yeah, but actually, he's managed the team very well. There was a lot of talk about him and Cashman not really seeing eye to eye on some things. There was even some talk that he's not the greatest communicator with the young talent. I mean, I don't really know much about Girardi, to be honest. So
not many people do, to be honest with you. He's not a very open book. Apparently, they didn't like that. It necessarily didn't have anything to do with his managerial style to a certain extent. Although Joe, I feel like, is like me in the fact that he thinks numbers are essential to managing, but they shouldn't be how you manage per se.
Right.
And that's what the Yankees want. They want CC Sabathia has pitched 75 pitches. He's got to come out of the game. It's not, we're going to let him go batter to batter and see how he's doing. It's not Game 2. He's pitching lights out. He's at 75 pitch in the 5th inning. Why don't we leave him in the game and see what happens? It's an 8-1 lead. Right. It's not that. Mm-hmm. It's let's get the bullpen up, and a bullpen gets exhausted by the end of the season because bullpens weren't meant to be used from the 4th inning on every day.
Right.
It was also because Joe Girardi's not a warm and cuddly dude, man. It's just not. He's regimented. He's almost militaristic. And I don't mean that in like he's like he's like that, but he's got the buzz cut. He wakes up, according to Michael Kay, he wakes up at the same time every day. He eats the same breakfast, and it's all very regimented.
That very cliche, first one in, last one to leave.
Well, no, I don't know about that, but I mean, I think as a manager you probably should be, but whatever. But I think it was more just you have all these young kids coming up, and they want somebody who's going to relate more to the kids than this guy is able to. Now, I think it's going to bite them in the ass. I really do. I don't feel like he hindered them being kids. In fact, I think him being sort of a regimented guy who let's be fair, he allowed them to have as much fun as they wanted to have, right? None of it got out of hand. None of it was ridiculous. They policed each other. He allowed them to have fun. He allowed them to do fake interviews in the dugout. Like, he wasn't a jerk. He's just not warm and cuddly. But I don't need him to be warm and cuddly. Let the coaches be warm. Let Rothschild and the hitting coaches be warm and cuddly. I don't need him to be that. I need him to get 10 wins more than every other person thought they were going to have this year, including all the math idiots who said they were going to have 81 or 82 wins.
Now, what it sounds like to me is the candidates for the job are people within the organization, whether it's, single A or triple A or all that stuff. I mean, there's been talk about Rob Thompson. There's been talk about Jay Bell. There was talk about I think the manager for was AAA, right? Scranton Wilkes Barre. There was even talk,
or Pedrique. I don't know if it's
the only guy I had heard about recently, although he doesn't really have any managerial experience from what I remember, is Jerry Hairston Jr. was a recent.
I also heard, I read an article for somebody making a case for Raul Ibanez.
Yes, I heard that. I read that too.
And to be fair, if what you're going for is relating to players and being able to get the most out of players, then a former player would be the best way to go. I think if you want to ride this young wave, Patrick might be your best option. He managed the AAA team to a championship last year and to the final round of the championship this year. He did it while losing Aaron Judge, Gary Sanchez, Severino, Bird, Frazier. Who else came up? Green. I mean, like, he lost
Gleyber Torres
Wade. Gleyber Torres to injury. Like, he lost Wade for pretty much the whole season because he was the backup infielder. So, like, this is a guy who, forget about in AAA, you're not really you're not an X's and O's manager. It's more like just development. But he's managed that team while just basically being a shuttle to a championship and getting to a championship. Oh, he also lost Jordan Montgomery, who was the starting pitcher in the championship game the year before. I would like to see him get it. I don't think he's going to. The Yankees are super tight-lipped about this. Nobody's heard anything from as far as I know.
Right. Moving forward for Girardi, I guess maybe he takes the year off because at this point there really isn't any other positions open.
He'll work at Fox or MLB Network or something.
Yeah.
He was really good at that when he was on.
I mean, you had the Nationals hire their manager, you had the Phillies hire their manager,
Yep.
And the only other really available position is the Marlins, and he's not going back to the Marlins.
Apparently, him and Derek Jeter aren't the best of buds either. So
so they can't swallow their pride, I guess, for a reunion in Miami. So
I'm not sure.
Course of action just
but
might
if you're
be...
Jeter, do you really want that? Right? I mean, like, if you're Jeter, you want to start fresh? You don't want to be. You're going to bring in a couple executive guys who are former Yankees, but nobody on the field is going to be a Yankee. You want this to be a new thing. You don't want that to be hanging over these poor guys.
Well, for Miami, you want a guy that you're going to have to grow with the team. It's kind of like what we said when the 49ers hired Lynch and Shanahan.
Yeah.
You know they're going to be together for years and years. So Jeter's going to do the same thing. And I think what Jeter's trying to do there is he's trying to sell high on a lot of these guys because let's face it, these guys have been with the Marlins for a long time and they haven't won anything.
Yeah.
They haven't made the playoffs. They've been pretty much at 500 or below 500 most of their time together. Mm-hmm. Yelich, Ozuna, Gordon, Stanton. Stanton might be a little bit more difficult to trade because his contract is just a huge albatross unless you want to take on the money.
To be honest with you, I think if you just took on the money, I think you could get Stanton. If you're just not going to get anything back for him, that's the point, right? So you have to decide. You want to pay half the contract to get prospects and know that you're not going to spend any money over the next couple of years, or do you want to give up all the contract and get no prospects?
Right. So the Marlins are pretty much starting over at this point, and where they go with manager is anybody's guess. With Jeter, it could be somebody maybe in the Yankee organization.
Maybe. I really think if he's smart about it, you start with somebody else. You go somewhere else. You're the Yankee guy. You're Derek fucking Jeter, man. Like, you're Mr. Yankee. You're going to start bringing in Yankees and make it Yankee South? You don't want to be known as Yankee South. You want to be known as the Marlins, right? You know what I mean? So the other thing, too, is the Marlins are actually, and it's going to sound insane, but if they do this well, they could turn it around really quick because the players you could get for a guy like Yelich, for a guy like D. Gordon, for a guy like Ozuna, these guys are good baseball players, and they would make a good team even better. And if you could get, look, the Cubs, say what you want, they could definitely use one of those outfielders on that team who can hit. The Indians could use an outfielder who could hit. I mean, they had Jason Kipnis playing center field last year during the playoffs this year. So, so you have teams that could use these guys. And if you hit the right trades, you could turn this around real quick.
You're listening to the Polar Opposites podcast. Check us out, as always, at polaropposites.podbean.com, as well as iTunes, as well as Spreaker.com, where we're currently live, as well as TuneIn Radio. And follow us on Twitter at Polar Opposites 1.
It's under the podcast section of TuneIn.
Did we fix the iTunes issue?
I let them know about it, but it's nothing I can do.
Okay. That's
the problem. I posted on Podbean, and then it's a URL or whatever it is, and they, like, when I post it on Podbean, it just goes to iTunes. There's nothing I can do about that.
We're also working on a possibility of trying to do a live show on Facebook Live, which we'll hopefully talk about in the next few weeks or so once we get details finalized. So let's segue to the NFL. Obviously, the Giants were off this week. They come back and they play. Who do they play this week?
They're going to lose. Whoever it is.
So,
to be honest, it's been.
But again, it goes back to what we were talking about, which was the quality of play in the league, and it's just been really, really piss poor for the most part, because a lot of the games are really low scoring. You have teams like the Raiders getting their doors blown off by Buffalo yesterday. Tampa Bay didn't even show up. They've been one of the most disappointing teams in the NFL this year. With a new coach, Jameis Winston looks like he's really regressed. Even Carolina, for what it's worth, is like you don't even know what Cam you're going to get, man, week to week. You know, you get a guy that sometimes throws 3 touchdowns, and you get a guy who throws 2 picks and really doesn't do much else.
They are home to the Rams.
Oh.
That will be a loss. Thank you so much, and have a good day.
As for the AFC, pretty much the Patriots are right where we expect them to be. They won again. They beat the Chargers yesterday. A little bit more of a harder fought victory, I thought, than what I'm accustomed with New England.
Yeah, but the Chargers have been good. I mean, they were 0-3 when they played the Giants, or I think it was 0-3 or 0-4. But they had lost 2 of those games on missed field goals at the end of games. Like, they were in all of their games. It just didn't go their way. So I think we all thought that they were worse than they actually were because, you don't necessarily watch Charger games all the time. You just see scores and that sort of thing. Real quick, the problem I have with evaluating the NFL right now is I don't know what to make of teams like the Eagles and the Bills and the Rams, because are they good teams or are they fraudulent because they're playing last place or third place schedules against an entire league that is just flat mediocre right now? And they've basically are winning the war of attrition of injuries. Now, I know that the Eagles have had injuries, but they haven't had like the Redskins yesterday got decimated offensive line. The Giants got decimated a wide receiver. Like the Green Bay Packers lose their quarterback. Like they lost Jason Peters, and that's a huge loss. But if that's the only person you lose on your offensive line, it's not as bad. Mm-hmm. You lost Ronald Darby for a couple weeks, but if he's the only guy you lose, it's not that bad.
Most recently, you have the Patriots losing Dante Hightower for the season. That's a big part of their defense because their defense has been really shaky.
It has, but again, if you lose just the one guy, yes, it's hard, but it's not like losing all the guys. You know what I mean? Because when you start getting to the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th guy, you're not going to get good results. You're just not. And that's what we're seeing. It's almost like replacement players.
I'll give you the exception to the rule on that one, the not losing the one guy. And it's Andrew Luck.
No. Quarterback is different. I don't mean quarterback, because when you lose your quarterback, you're decimated at that position, right? Like there's nobody, let's be fair, there's no quarterback who is on the bench right now in the NFL who is better than the starter ahead of him. There's not one. There isn't, because if he was, he'd be playing. So when the starter goes out, no matter how bad the team, the guy that's going in is not going to be as good as the guy who went out. It's just not going to. It's not like it was in 1990, where Jeff Hostetler could basically approximate Phil Simms almost to a T. Mm-hmm. You don't have it anymore. Where Steve Young sat behind. Steve Young would never sit behind Joe Montana for that long nowadays. He would have been traded or released because of money. There would have been some ludicrous reason. So, the level of play is bad. The Jets lost yesterday. I mean, look, I think the only thing I'll say is this. It was terrible conditions. I thought both teams presented pretty admirably considering the conditions. I thought the level of play in that game was not terrible considering the conditions. Now, there were tons of, the Falcons couldn't get the center exchange. They 5 times. But they had like 5 missed snaps. They lost 2 fumbles.
But that's
the
my
thing. But let me just say this, and then I'll let you go on the Jets because I'll let you do it. But you can't. What are you doing catching the punt? What are you doing trying to catch the punt? Like, I get everything. I will forgive everything else. You're trying to make plays in football, but in that weather, in that situation, just let the ball go, man.
Of course,
just let the ball go.
What's the worst case scenario? You get it on the 10.
So who cares?
But at least you have it,
right?
Okay. And the thing is, McCown, again, I thought McCown had a pretty decent game overall. He threw a couple of touchdowns. I mean, he took a sack in a bad spot that kind of not knocked him out of field goal range, but basically made it a little more difficult for Catanzaro to make it.
And in that situation, you don't want to lose those yards.
Exactly. But overall, I mean, McCown has been, I definitely think he's been better than advertised because they wasn't really expecting much out of him to begin with, right?
He wasn't being advertised.
Yeah.
What did he play? 1 series in the preseason? Was it 1?
He played in the 4th preseason game, and he played the opening series that I was at when I took.
So he played basically 3 series in all. So there was no advertisement.
And keep in mind, and when that's when they that was without Jermaine Kearse and Jeremy Curley because those guys weren't added till after the preseason was over. Overall, again, I'm not going to get furious with this team because, again, They're not a good team. I think everybody still jumped the gun on them being a playoff team, which is just ridiculous to think about right now. They've held tough with teams like, Miami and New England. They can't finish. And that's a big deal if you want to be a playoff team. You need to finish these games. When you have a 2-touchdown lead, you can't cough it up and play like crap in the fourth quarter, which basically leads me to believe that they're playing not to lose maybe with a lead like that. Overall, I guess the thing is, for me, I was okay with the game. I like what I'm seeing out of some of the other players. I thought Claiborne played really well on Julio Jones. I thought that Mo Wilkerson played a lot better.
He can't stay healthy. It sucks because he'd be really good.
A guy who
stay healthy.
A guy who was getting killed in the beginning of the year, I think has played a lot better, is Darren Lee. I see him a lot in the backfield a lot. As for Forte's ridiculous kind of complaining about running the football, you got to understand where John Morton comes from. He's from the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints are a pass-happy team. Only recently have they become more of a run-oriented team with Ingram and Alvin Kamara.
You also only average like 2 yards a carry, and both your touchdowns were passes over 10 yards.
But the thing is,
in a rainstorm, right?
But the thing is, the offensive line hasn't been good run blocking. That's been a big issue. Okay, that's why they can't even get holes open. That's why these guys are getting killed behind the line of scrimmage. But look, overall, I hate the fact that they lost the game, just because I just want to see them finish a game. It's been a while.
They will.
But I think, hopefully they're just getting closer and closer to realizing what they have to do and all that stuff. I think for the most part, Bowles has done a decent job, although I get a little exhausted hearing about they're playing hard for Bowles. Just like they say the same crap about Rex. It's like they run through a wall for Rex, but you don't really see it on the field that they're trying to run through a wall for Rex.
Also, can we have how when famous people give speeches and there's an interpreter behind them who signs for people who can't hear? Who can't hear?
Yeah, sure.
Can we get something for Todd Bowles where there's somebody with a frickin' ounce of personality does his press conferences for him? Give him half the money he makes now, and we'll say, listen, you don't have to talk to the press anymore. There's going to be a person who goes by Todd Bowles, and he's going to talk to the press for you. And he's going to have personality. And he's not going to go, well,
we didn't make enough plays.
We didn't make enough plays, and we got to make more plays, and oh my God, I'm literally him talking is the definition of paint drying. It's awful.
Because the guys like him and guys like Eric Mangini was the same way.
You haven't earned it, Todd. You have not earned the right to be Bill Belichick yet.
Exactly my point. And the thing is this they think that by the less is more strategy is great during press conferences, but it's exhausting. And if there's one other thing I'm exhausted of listening to as an excuse is the young and inexperienced. Here's my thing. While I think they're the Jets are a young team, and I will not, take that away from them, obviously. The fact is they're in these games every week. The only game they really haven't been in was the game against Oakland where they got their doors blown off in the third quarter.
And they were in that game until again, another special teams error where the guy botches the kickoff. Was it the kickoff?
Yeah, it was right before.
Punt?
No, it was a punt right before the half.
Right, botches that, and then the Raiders go up, and the game gets exploded.
They've been in every game. You have guys like Robbie Anderson, guys like Austin Seferian-Jenkins making plays out there.
And
Robbie
that was
Anderson, a great
terrible
game.
Call yesterday. That wasn't a block in the back. Will you guys stop, please, ruining football?
The refereeing the officiating has been brutal to begin with.
Let me just say this about the Jets real quick, because I think people are losing sight of how the NFL works nowadays. And you get a lot of these propped up teams because they play bad one year and then they go against a really crappy schedule and then they go way above where they should be, and which is why a lot of those teams will come back to earth. The Giants probably are one of those teams. What the Jets need right now is to not make the playoffs because they need to, again, next year, play a third or fourth place schedule. It will help your growth. You will grow quicker if you play the schedules you should be playing each year. If the Jets made the playoffs this year and had to play a second place schedule next year, then they would go 1-15 or 4-12 or something like that, because that's how it works. Because you can get very easily fooled by playing a bad schedule against bad teams. So the Jets right now, I understand. Listen, keep playing hard. Keep trying to win games. And when they lose games, be mad. I'm not saying you don't have to be mad. What I'm saying is that in the end, you will be happier next year, because next year, when you're playing a third place schedule and then you end up in second place, you're where you should be. You'll be able to then handle the second place schedule the year after that.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the only other thing I would say is, because this came up on one of the morning shows this morning, it came up again about, the Jets should have drafted Deshaun Watson. First of all, I mean, while I understand why people think that right now, because basically Deshaun Watson's tearing it up for the Texans. I mean, he's having an outstanding year. Probably think the favorite for Rookie of the Year, no?
Oh, I mean,
Right?
yeah,
I mean,
at this point, sure.
So, but the fact is, we'll never know on draft day how good Deshaun Watson's going to be, and there's no guarantee he would have been very good with the Jets.
There's also look at Robert Griffin III, his first year. People were saying he was the greatest quarterback in the world. He won Rookie of the Year, and where is he now?
But the thing is right now, I mean, the fact is the Jets got ridiculed for taking safeties in back-to-back rounds. It looks like it's paying off because they're playing really, really well.
Well, guess what you won't have to do for the next 5 to 10 years in the draft?
Worry about a safety.
There you go.
So
It was like when they drafted DeBrick and Mangold.
Now, look, at this point, I just hope that eventually that they see that, look, if it's not working out, you have 2 more games before the bye. Short week Thursday against Buffalo, following week on the road against Tampa. If you lose both of those games, then I think this is the time where you say, we're going to start Bryce Petty next week, and we're going to try. Whether they do that or not is irrelevant. Well, not irrelevant, but whether we do that, we'll never know.
But I got to say this, Craig. I think at this point, you can just safely say those guys are bad quarterbacks. The Jets know it, and they're not going to play them. Unless McCown gets hurt. If McCown gets hurt, then they're going to have to. But I don't think there's going to be a point this year where they're going to say, we're going to play you, Hackenberg or Petty, because we don't think you're good enough. Because let me say this. If they thought they were good enough, they would have started the season.
See, I don't agree with that, though.
Or they would have been playing. Don't you think?
But here's the thing. I think Hackenberg would be active. He's like inactive all season long.
He's been active for 2 games, I think it is.
Yeah.
So I think the Jets honestly have just given up. Seriously, I really
you know
think
what?
they have.
And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with them if they feel like
just
they gave
tell
up on Hackenberg and they look. Just accept the fact it was a bad pick.
Yeah.
Okay. No one will blame you.
We screwed up.
There's a lot of teams out there that do that all the time. So if you're constantly making the guy inactive every week, then it's obvious to me that you don't really think very highly of the guy. Otherwise, he'd be backing up Josh McCown every week. So look, moving forward, it's baby steps. Hopefully they kind of get a couple of more wins for the season. But I like the direction they're going. Yeah. It's just that I just want to see them finish games more. And I think that'll just come with experience and as these guys just kind of grow together, because I think this roster will pretty much stay the same outside of adding more, a few more players next year and some more draft picks and so forth.
And also, real quick, and then we're going to start closing time, is you want them to fail so they learn how to succeed. If they just succeed and never fail, when they fail, it gets even worse.
Yeah.
So this is better, because when they figure out how to win, they'll have figured out how to win.
Mm-hmm.
And there it is.
Maddie, let's bring this show home with a little closing time. Closing time, as always, rounds out this podcast for the week. 4 topics today, as it's very light in news this week. 4 topics, anything goes, all opinions vary, all opinions legal, all opinions matter. Maddie, are you ready?
Ho!
Here we go. Number 1, the Dolphins suffered an embarrassing loss last Thursday to the Baltimore Ravens 40-0, in which linebacker Kiko Alonso was flagged for a questionable dirty hit on Joe Flacco, and Ndamukong Suh grabbed Ravens backup quarterback Ryan Mallett by the throat after he jumped offside and shoved Mallett to the ground. When Suh was asked about the play, he claims he was defending himself from Mallett attacking him and that he doesn't regret protecting himself. Reports are now surfacing that the Dolphins could dump Suh after the season, and if they designate him as a post-June 1st cut, it would result in a $17 million cap hit next year and a $13 million cap hit in 2019. If Suh is on the roster next season, he would count $26 million towards Miami's cap. Is this contract one of the all-time worst given to a player in the NFL?
I think it's one of the all-time worst when you're talking about modern-day contracts. But let's be fair. Some of the worst contracts ever were first-round picks back in the day before they had the rookie salary thing. And they had guys like Jamarcus Russell and Tim Couch and Tony Mandrich, and these guys who made buttloads of cash before they ever did anything in the NFL.
Curtis Enos.
And then just brutally destroyed their teams for years because they couldn't afford anything else. But this is a terrible contract. And I think we all knew it was a terrible contract when they did it. Like, we weren't unsure. We thought Suh was a good player, but not this good. Defensive tackles aren't worth this much money because they don't get the things you want out of a defensive lineman, which is sacks.
Yeah.
Stopping the run isn't sexy. It's not worth $26 million against your cap because you can do it with 2 fat guys and just not have one there. So, I mean, that's it. I will say this. Spectacular excuse. I was defending myself against Ryan Mallett. Oh, man. Dominican Sue, you are one of the biggest, meanest, baddest dudes in the NFL. You don't want to take that back? Are you sure? Because I think I'd want to take that back. Because next week, if I'm an offensive lineman, I'd be like, yo, man, you better not step. I'll get Ryan Mallett. Like, come on. You just said Ryan Mallett attacked you and you had to defend yourself. All you had to do is stick out your arm, and he would have just swung underneath it like a little freaking nerd back in high school.
The problem with the contract in general is it really just crippled the Dolphins to really improve other areas of the team. So they got kind of screwed. If you think about it, a lot of the Dolphins players, quite a few of them are overrated. I mean, I think Jarvis Landry, as much as he's a nice little pass catcher, he hasn't really done a hell of a whole lot for the Dolphins in general. And then on top of that, you have other guys. I mean, Cameron Wake may be the exception to the rule. You know, Kiko Alonso's been a nice player. Their secondary's been atrocious. And to the point where they even cut Byron Maxwell, who was just awful, you know, covering receivers. And then on top of that, you got to pay Sue all this kind of money, and it's just crippling your cap. That's a Mike Tannenbaum move. I like Mike Tannenbaum, but he always has been big on going for the flashy player. And that's what's kind of killed them in the long run. So it's hindered their and the thing is, even if they cut him, it's still going to hinder them at the end of the day because it's still going to count $17 million towards next year. So it doesn't matter if you trade him or cut him, it's still going to kill you either way.
Yeah, I agree. Number 2, a league source told ESPN that multiple teams reached out to the Detroit Lions about possibly trading for the rights to wide receiver Calvin Johnson. The Lions reportedly told teams to reach out to Megatron to gauge his interest, but the response was lukewarm at best, which killed any serious talks. Johnson abruptly retired from the NFL last season due to being unhappy in Detroit, and especially the direction the franchise was headed. Johnson will have to play for whichever team acquires his rights, but has said on multiple occasions he has no plans to return to football. Craig, did it make sense for teams to inquire about Megatron this late in the season?
It depends on the team. If it's a team like the Browns or the 49ers, then no. I mean, obviously not. I think it would be a bad idea. If it's a team like the Eagles or, you know, maybe the Texans or maybe the Patriots, Kansas City. If it's a team that's definitely going to compete.
I mean, you put him on Kansas City's offense.
He's going to be really good.
I mean.
So the fact is now, then it becomes a case of Megatron getting back into game shape, learning the offense. You know, it's going to be kind of a slow crawl. He's been out of football for pretty much a year now. The fact is I think Megatron is kind of gay. I think he's somewhat interested in coming back as long as it's not playing for Detroit and if it's playing for a contender.
That's fair.
So in that sense, you know, but I think when the teams called, I think he was like,
yeah, because it was like the Dolphins and like the Vikings.
Yeah. It's like
mediocre teams. Like, but he's like, I've been on mediocre teams. I want to be on a good team.
Yeah, the Arizona Cardinals. Pass.
Yo, if you're the Patriots, why wouldn't you call?
Right.
Seriously, why wouldn't you? You could have him literally sit the next 6 games, get in game shape, have him come back for the last whatever games, be awesome, go win the Super Bowl, and be done with it.
And that's my point. So my guess is the teams that were calling him probably he wasn't interested in playing for.
Like the Giants.
I don't think maybe.
I'm kidding. It's not. It wouldn't. No.
I mean, like, okay, think about bad teams.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
I mean, those are the teams that are probably going to call for him because, like the Browns, I could easily see them making a call.
I agree.
So, number 3, the Nationals officially hired Cubs bench coach Dave Martinez as their next manager, replacing Dusty Baker, who was fired after another disappointing first-round exit from the playoffs. Martinez will get a 3-year deal with an option for a 4th year, which is the longest contract the team has ever committed to a manager. Martinez takes over a team with a ton of talent in Bryce Harper, Steven Strasburg, Max Scherzer, and Daniel Murphy, to name a few, but also is now part of a franchise that is very impatient with their managers. Maddie, in your opinion, does Martinez last the full 3 years as Nationals manager?
I think he sort of has to, right? Like, I think the Nationals have to change this narrative because it's going to be – now, listen, you'll be able to find guys because there'll be always somebody willing to take a job, right? But you won't maybe find the best guys, you know? So I think this might be the one where you just got to let him do it. You just have to let him. And so you tried it with Dusty. You gave Matt Williams, who had been like a bench coach, and I think did he manage the Diamondbacks?
No, he was just he was a coach.
Coach, right?
Yeah.
And then he gets his first manager job, and he craps the bed. Then you go with Dusty, and he craps the bed. So then you're like, well, maybe we'll go with this guy who's been on, the bench of the Cubs for the last couple of years, and he's been a good guy. So maybe we'll go with him. But you have to change the narrative, or it's going to be hard to find guys that want to manage your team.
And that's exactly you just hit the nail on the head right there. The fact is that the Nationals, if you keep doing this, it's like the equivalent of the guy who quits his job every year and gets a new job. No one's going to hire you after a while because then the people are going to wonder why why you keep leaving your position. The Nationals are the same thing. If I'm a manager, I might want to take the job if there's nothing out there for me, but at the same time, I'd say to myself, well, the life expectancy here is like a year to 2 years. I mean, is it really worth it?
Right.
So in that sense, look, Martinez is a good manager. I think he'll be a good manager. He's been rumored to be a managerial candidate for dozens of teams in the league. It's just a case of if he craps the bed in the playoffs, is he good as gone after a year to 2 years? And in that sense, it just does nothing for your franchise when you have that quick of turnover.
I agree. Number 4, the Cavs suffered another embarrassing loss last night, falling to the Knicks 114-95. After the game, head coach Tyronn Lue called the loss unacceptable, as over the past week they've lost to the Magic, Pelicans, Nets, and Knicks. 4 of their last 5 games, the Cavs have lost by an average of 16.8 points. LeBron James has some new faces on the roster this year after dealing Kyrie Irving to the Celtics. The team acquired Jay Crowder and Isaiah Thomas for Irving and also signed Derrick Rose and Dwayne Wade. Craig, on a scale of 1 to 10, how worried should Cavs fans be about the team's disappointing start?
I'd say like a 2. I just don't really think that.
And that's like a low.
Pushing it.
That's like a 2-.
Yeah, it's kind of pushing it too, because look, there could be a lot of reasons. It could be the fact that they do have a lot of new phases and these guys all have to gel together. It's the fact that Kevin Love is playing out of position when he should be playing. Tristan Thompson should be playing in the middle, and so he's getting beat up on the boards a little bit. And it could be the fact that Tyronn Lue is just not that good of a coach. I mean, there's a lot of factors to this reason why the Cavs are off to a bad start. Now, at the end of the day, it will all rest with LeBron James. And if LeBron James thinks that Tyronn Lue should be fired, he's going to get fired. Mm-hmm. That simple. The roster that's put together is what LeBron James wanted. Kyrie Irving wanted out, so they got rid of him. Dwayne Wade became a free agent, so he wanted his buddy Dwayne Wade back. And they got Derrick Rose. And they got all these other guys. This team will go the way LeBron James goes. You could, like I said, you could easily chalk it up to a few things, but if I'm a Cavs fan, you cannot possibly be so early in the season. You cannot be disappointed with the start. That's like basically saying the Knicks 114-95. The Knicks are going to be the number 3 seed this year.
It's ludicrous.
You just can't predict it right now.
Well, but this is the biggest problem that faces the NBA, right? We talked about the NFL problems. This is the biggest problem that faces the NBA is the fact that their regular season is useless for the Cavaliers, for the Thunder,
Warriors.
for the Warriors, for the Houston Rockets,
and
maybe the Celtics. It is a completely useless proposition. There's literally no way the Cavaliers are not making the playoffs this year, because whenever they want to, they're going to go on a 10 or 15 game run and they're going to be fine. Okay,
and everyone will forget about how they started out giving up and losing by 16
but
points.
But LeBron even basically said it last night. He's like, we're going to the playoffs, and they are.
And he's not wrong.
So guess what? Now that last night was a big win for the Knicks.
Sure,
it was a big win for the Nets when they beat them. It's big games for those teams because they need them as building blocks to hopefully be one of those teams where the regular season doesn't matter.
And it boosts the confidence of bad teams when they can beat a team like the Cavs.
It does,
especially for the Knicks winning on the road.
But in the end, if you're worried as a Cavs fan, now listen, you should be worried that you're not going to win the championship, but that's ludicrous if you're worried about that. But the fact that you would ever worry that this team, that any team with LeBron James on it, would not make the playoffs is just flat lunacy.
And just think about it. They're going to get Rose back. They're going to get Thomas back. They're going to be pretty much stacked.
Yeah.
A stacked roster that's no team is going to be able to handle as it gets later and later into the season.
It's just ludicrous.
It's ridiculous to even think about it. But, of course, everybody's making a big deal about it because the Cavs are not 8-0 to start the season. They're, what are they, 4-3, I think, or 3-4?
And the Warriors are the same thing. They lost last night to the Pistons, and it was a bad loss, but it's frickin' the first couple weeks of the season. They're going to win their 60 games, 58 games, and they're going to go to the finals or at least the last round. It's going to be fun.
And closing time is officially over.
Boom.
And this episode of Polar Opposites is over. It's a quickie, but unfortunately that's what we got to do. We'd like to thank everybody for listening as always. Check us out as always at polaropposites.podbean.com, iTunes, Spreaker.com, and TuneIn Radio. Follow us on Twitter at PolarOpposites1. And as I said before, Maddie and I are working on some things for a possible Facebook Live show in the near future. As soon as we get more info, we will definitely pass it along. One more time, polaropposites.podbean.com, iTunes, Spreaker.com, and TuneIn Radio. Follow us on Twitter at PolarOpposites1. Next week, we'll recap the World Series. We'll do NFL. We'll do NBA. We'll do anything we could squeeze into this podcast.
Hopefully a Yankee manager.
Hopefully a Yankee manager as well. Enjoy the week. Enjoy the games. Enjoy life. And we will talk again next week.
Bye.